Okay. I will just turn it right over to you, Rabbi.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sure. Okay, everybody, good morning, Boker Tov. It's nice to see all of you. Well, many of you. A couple of you are hiding, but that's okay. It's early in the morning where you are. Well, it's in the morning, but it's a beautiful beginning of afternoon here in southern New Jersey. The sun is shining. It's going to be 80. The leaves are beginning to fall, which is a sign of impending winter, which is horrible. But anyway.
Yeah, please.
So this Torah portion is unbelievable. We're never going to cover all of it. So it raises some very interesting questions. But first, um, join me in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so if you have your Torah books, your Torah commentaries, your translations, um, I need you to open up to Parasha Ki Teitzei. You're going to meet us at Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 10. Deuteronomy chapter 21. Oh, okay. Way to go, Chuck. Never leave home without it. The movie is very long. So it's nice to be with you. This is my farewell. I think my cycle is done this week today. So we're going to leave you with this very, very fascinating Torah portion. There's about four rubrics that I want to cover with you. The odds are we won't get past number two, but that's okay. And
Do you want me to share a screen, Rabbi?
no. One of the mysteries of life that I do not understand is I had all the notes that I wanted for this right in front of me half an hour ago. And now they are not here, which is really cool, which means I have to recall and hopefully have memorized everything, which at my age will be very interesting. Oh, here it is. You know, too much stuff, too much stuff. So here we have at the beginning of this portion. This is the middle of the one of the three sermons that Moses gives at the end of, which is the book of Deuteronomy. Um, he's as you know, the book of Deuteronomy is a recapitulation of the previous wanderings and the wilderness experience, and it's divided up to basically three sermons. Much like you'll get on high holidays, a little longer than usual, several chapters worth. So we're in the middle of this second one, and Ki Teitzei begins with a military thing. So if you look at this is the first what we're going to start. So if you have your Torah commentaries, or if you're going on Sefaria, we're going to go to 21:10, and the text is as follows. This is from Eitz Chaim, which is the modern conservative Jewish commentary. The translations in the Plout are basically the same. When you take the field against your enemies and God delivers them into your power, and you take some of them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and would take her to wife, you shall bring her into your house, and she shall trim her hair, pare her nails, and discard her captive's garb. She shall spend a month's time in your house, lamenting her father and mother. After that, you may come to her, possess her, and she shall be your wife. Then should you no longer want her, you must release her outright. You must not sell her for money, since you had your will with her. You must not enslave her. So you're in the battlefield, you won the battle. One of the captives is this absolutely drop dead gorgeous woman. You take her as captive. She must be, according to Torah law, allowed to mourn for that which she has lost. You can wait 30 days, shloshim. and then you can bring her into your house and take her. But the last verse says, uh, okay, it's been a couple of months. I'm done with this. You have to release her, but you can't make her a slave. Okay, what's going on here? Now play with it as you know when we do this. Let the text speak to you. We know that the peshat, we know the literal text. Now play with this and extrapolate what how if you were preaching this morning, what lesson could you possibly take from this rather interesting? I possess her. Okay, I don't want it anymore. Anybody want to hazard a guess? It's a just kind of a disturbing little passage in a way. What do you do with this? It's Torah law. What do you do with this? And says it's more compassionate than what? Than what?
And what ISIS does.
Well, let's not even go there. Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. Remember the context is Deuteronomy. So the book of Deuteronomy is usually dated somewhere around 620 BCE. So give or take 2,500 years during the Josianic Reformation, which failed. But that's another story for another time. Okay, Chris, I was waiting for you. I can always count on you.
So the good thing about Judaism, it's perfectly fine to disagree, even with your own rabbis, but you got to.
You're supposed to disagree.
That's the 614th mitzvah, right?
Or the 11th commandment.
11th commandment, okay. I'm so glad that Reform Jews don't take everything as, God spoke Moses wrote every single drop of ink exactly as we have it. You can take it as, somebody could have been reading an earlier version of the Torah if you want to take a Reform viewpoint, Reform Judaism, and say somebody wasn't comfortable with this, so he's toning down the language. And especially classical Reform, that's perfectly acceptable. And maybe in traditional Reform also. So what if there's a later editor that's had an issue and wanted to tone things way down? Because I know
Mm-hmm.
the KDS translation tones a lot of the stuff down that the Hebrew is kind of graphic on.
Well, all right. Let's take a look at the Hebrew. There's two words. There's two. Well, I don't want to do that yet. Kim, go ahead.
Okay, it's actually me. I'm Mira.
Okay, Mira.
What this is saying is that it's okay to rape her, absolutely fine to rape her, and then just let her go afterward because she has no value, basically, because you took away her virginity or her marriage to the guy you killed. And so now she's on her own and you shouldn't derive anything from it. But then again, who's going to want this woman? Who's going to save this woman afterward? It's a horrifying, horrifying instruction.
All right.
And it's all based on physical beauty. You see her, you get hot for her, and then it's okay. It doesn't matter what she wants.
Okay, so again, thank you very much. Actually, Sherry and I were talking about this before airtime about the necessity, because I'm doing this with one congregation here, of getting to introduce people to feminist theology, which is a fairly new, in the history of Judaism, a fairly new reality, but very popular right now. Given the feminist revolution, it's another class for another time. But Mir brings up actually and touches on what Christo alluded to. So if you go to the text, if you have the Hebrew in front of you, and yes, she may correct me if I'm wrong. No. So in verse 11, you have the Hebrew v'hashachta, which in the her and which in the Eschim is trying to desire her. And in verse 14, you have a different word, chafatzta, different word, which in the eights is translated no longer want her. Now, in some commentaries, if you go to the Hebrew, and it's always good if you can try in a lot of times in translations, because remember, every translation is a commentary. So if you go to the dictionary and try to parse this out root-wise, because remember, every Hebrew word has a 3-letter root. The hashachta has in 11 has the sense of Muriel, like this is lust. And the second word in 14 is as Christo alluded to, is a change. It is not desire. Desire. So it's like I see a woman, her beauty captures me, and I lust after her. And after I've lusted, the desire for the lust dissipates. Now, happen in real life. Okay? A lot. Actually, in the old dates of red, as we called it in the trade, the old High Holiday Reform prayer book, in the modern recitation of the Al-Chet, I think it's in the new Machzor as well, you have a phrase, Al-Chet Shechatanu, about confusing lust for love, which is what this text is about. Now, let me show you a very, very, very interesting take on this. This is from one of the many, many, many Torah commentary books that every rabbi has. So in case they're running late and they need to come up with a good sermon, they just reach in there and pull something out. But this is a book called Living Each Week. I have referred to this before. It's edited by the late Abraham Twersky, who was really one of the pioneers in the Jewish addiction movement based in Pittsburgh. He recently passed away. But he was a Torah scholar. And in this book, which as you see, I've used a lot, he has this interesting commentary on this particular passage. Listen to this. This is really cool. Furthermore, the Torah uses 2 different words to describe the soldier's feelings for the woman. Initially, the Torah uses the word chafatzta, which is accurately translated as "you have lust for her." And subsequently, after the passion subsides, it becomes evident that lo chafatzta, you never really willed and desired her in the first place. At a moment of intense passion, a person may believe that he has one kind of feeling, only to discover that the passion subsides, that he was deceiving himself in interpreting the feelings. The explanation has practical applications when a person feels a strong desire for something, and particularly if one finds a myriad of reasons why one believes one needs that particular object. It is wise to pause and reflect, or better yet, to seek guidance from an objective person who is not subject to the same intense emotions. It may be discovered that one really does not want something that one was absolutely convinced that one wanted. Have you ever seen an individual who you'll talk to and says, I gotta have this. My God, this is I gotta have it. I must. And you say, well, do you understand what you're doing? I don't care what I'm doing. I'm every rabbi who's done premarital counseling, social worker who's done counseling in relationships has had this congregation. I'm passionately in love. And then 6 months later, what happens? Not so much in love anymore. I don't really think I was in love, whatever that means. So, Joanne, so is the passage a cautious guidance? Finish what you were saying, Ann. Where,
Is the passage a cautious guidance about fleeting feelings or permission to rape, as that I can't remember who mentioned.
Mira mentioned it.
Yeah, after following a certain protocol.
It really is, I think, in our understanding to riff on Tversky, it's a cautionary factor about human emotion of saying, don't confuse the heat of passion in a moment for anything really substantive. And sometimes he's saying, when you have that emotion, go talk to somebody objective. But those people aren't always around. And so in warfare, the heat of emotion sometimes takes over. And then, oh, I shouldn't have done that. The reason why I wanted to start with this passage and these two words is this is not theoretical. This is being, I would imagine that there's 10 screens here. Some of you know people who've walked this walk. Some of us may have walked this walk. That we get to an individual. If you've counseled people who've had an extramarital affair, and one of the questions, why did you say, I was overwhelmed with emotion. I've never been that way. I was overwhelmed. I was, it's a passion, the blah, 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 blah. That's just exactly what this passage is. Sherry, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, I mean, at that time in history, was it essentially the way of tradition? Was it the way of the world, in that culture, that women were essentially property?
Yeah. Now here's one of the interesting.
Still is in the Arab world.
Remember what in the traditional marriage, so I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday who was talking about they were at a wedding, traditional wedding this month. And with all the ceremonies and everything, and the bride, the father signed the doc. I said, remember, you're purchasing property. You in essence, in the old days, and even some of that language in a traditional ceremony still seeps through. You were purchasing a property, and the property had to be without blemish, be a young virgin. And most of us have done premarital counseling, and you sit down with a 35-year-old and a 33-year-old who are getting married for the first time, which is no longer unusual. And they may have been living together for 3 or 4 years. And you say, well, no doubt, you understand, that you haven't, obviously you haven't had sexual relations at all. And they burst out laughing, Yes, this is a reference to a period of time and in a particular context of culture and a particular context of warfare that was then. The problem of this, here's the modern day problem, is that while we think this is a text from 2,500 years ago, this is still going. The emotions being played out in this text, we read about every day in the newspaper. We may dress up the language a little bit, but we read about this in the newspaper. And so far is the treatment of women, you can make the argument that the commodification of women in many cultures still exists. Still exists. Mira, move over. I can't see your face. All I see is your hand waving. It still exists. And if if you don't believe me, you got to watch the debate on Tuesday night. The and the cultures. The reason why I wanted to bring you this text is it's not an ancient text. It is an ancient text with very, very modern applications. And the psychological imprint of this, if you were taking a look at this from a psychospiritual, you have the traditional Jewish tension between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination and the evil inclination. So this is why I love teaching Torah, because it's nice to look at ancient texts, but these la'asot, they speak, as the blessing says, to things going on right now in our own psyche, in our own lives. And it is, and we've dealt with this, we've dealt with children, they'll come to us, I have to have this, Dad, I have to have this, I have to have this toy. Ever walk this walk with kids? And then 2 months later, the toy that they had to have this, or life would have no meaning. It's like, did you ever play with that toy? Yeah, it's there. Okay, done. So these two words, which is why I wanted to bring you the two differences, because the Hebrew itself uses two different words for two different stages of emotional involvement, and it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Okay. The portion goes on to talk about inheritance law. The next text that I wanted is 22. Go to 22, 1 and 2. Oh, we may get there. 22, 1 and 2 is one of the great, there's two major proof texts in this Torah portion. One is the one we're going to look at right now, which has been used as a proof text for medical ethics. And the second one we won't get to until 24:1, chapter 24:1, which is the proof text in Judaism for divorce. So because a divorce is in the Torah, it's in this Torah portion. 22, 1 and 2. If you see a fellow's ox or sheep gone astray, did we do this last year? I don't think we did. Do not ignore it. You must take it back to your fellow. If your fellow does not live near you, or you do not know who he is, you shall bring it home, and it shall remain with you until your fellow claims it, and then you shall give it back to him. The Hebrew is v'hashevoto lo. Yashu shev is to sit. It should sit back with him. In some translations, it's and thou shalt restore. You shall restore that lost property, that lost ox, to its rightful owner. Now, okay, that makes sense in the context of 2,500 years ago, biblical civilization. This was before John Deere. The ox, and all the passage in the Torah about yokes and oxen and different animals, etc., etc., etc. Okay, we know that's the literal part of the text, but we also know we go beyond that, because Judaism is proof text. We go to text in order to prove a position that we want to have proven. Okay, now play with this idea. You're supposed to, if you find something, if somebody has lost something, Torah commands us that we are obligated to help restore that which has been lost. Clear? Clear? Everybody got that?
Mhm.
Question. If you get sick, what have you lost?
Your health.
Your health. This is real easy.
Mhm.
Thus, in the voluminous amount of bioethics literature, and which is another class, several classes, because it's the texts are voluminous. This particular passage in Maimonides, 12th century, who was a physician, took this as a proof text for the ability and the right for human beings to interrupt and interfere with illness, which, if you are of a certain religious personality, everything comes from God. Therefore, if you got sick, there must have been a reason. Judaism rejected this totally and said, it says in Deuteronomy that we have to restore that which is lost. You've lost your health. I am obligated to help restore that which has been lost. This is one of the proof texts in classical Jewish tradition to allow human beings to become doctors and thus change the natural flow of life. Illness, get rid of it.
So what if you lost your faith? Does this mean that somebody should help you to get it back again?
You see,
Necessarily obligated, but just that you would.
So we didn't rehearse this at all, did we?
No.
No, it's not like the boardwalk in Atlantic City. I don't have a watch to show you or, okay. So Leona, I want you to hold that because you anticipated something that we may get to, but we're going to jump to it right after I get done with this introduction because you raise an interesting question that comes out of this Torah portion as well. You see, you must have read ahead or some divine Torah spirit must have spoken to you while on the interstate. So this text is thus, through interpretation, used as a proof text in order to allow young Jewish men and women to become doctors. And if this was a class on Judaism and medicine, we would go through the whole Mishigas and stuff, but that takes a long time. And the bio and the medical ethics stuff that's happening today, of which we've done several podcasts on it, huge amount of stuff and somewhat controversial, depending upon where you live. So, clear? Proof text. Now, Leona asks the question, if I've lost my faith, is it incumbent upon my rabbi, assuming I have one, to help restore my lost faith? Quick answer, Leona, is yes. But the majority of Jews in the United States don't belong to a synagogue. So they don't have a rabbi. And then they go on, to Temple Zoom and Google whatever, because it's all online now. But the question that you raise comes right out of, where is this text? Comes right out of of a series of texts that come next in chapter 22, verses 6 and 8. There's two little vignettes in this Torah portion. This is why this Torah portion is really filled with lots of interesting stuff. Okay. Let me see if I can. The first text has bothered Jewish interpretations for centuries, and that is if you're walking down the way, if you're walking down the road, and you see a bird's nest fallen, the Torah in this particular portion says you have to let the mother bird go if you want to take the eggs for food. You can't kill the mother and the fledglings at the same time. And there's all kinds of moral interpretations about this. And right after that, um, and the text says, let the mother go, take only the young, in order that you may fare well and have a long life. In verse 8, which is the shadow over your shoulder, Leon, the very next verse says, when you build a new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof. That's a guard. If anyone should fall from it, so you don't become guilty, because a lot of the roofs are flat, were flat. Still, if you've been to Israel, Middle East, stuff like that, a lot of the roofs are flat. People go up there. You're supposed to, if you build that, you're supposed to put a guardrail around it so that people don't fall off and die. By the way, parenthetically, in the Torah commentary that we just did for my, oh, be quiet. Every time, it's stupid lady in the watch. But even this verse has implications for us right now. I wrote this on the Torah commentary on Jewish sacred aging, because really what this talks about is the prevention of falls. And for those of us as we get older, falling and prevention of falls is one of the most important. I can't tell you, you probably know people who have a fall in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, break a leg, break a bone, break a hip, and I just did a funeral of a guy who walked this walk. And so this idea of the parapet has direct implications. So, Leona, there's a midrash, I think it's from the Palestinian Talmud. Remember, we have two Talmuds, the Babylonian and the Palestinian. They do that purposely to drive rabbinic. Who are you talking to? Some guy over your left shoulder.
Don.
Don, don't be scared, Don. Nothing's going to happen. You can get in here. So there's a midrash from the Palestinian Talmud, I think it's from the Palestinian Talmud, about a gentleman who has a great mythological presence in medieval Jewish tradition, the guy by the name of Elisha ben Abuya. Anybody ever heard of him? Yeah, Yashim, who is Elisha ben Abuya?
I'm sorry, I don't really know, but he was a Sephardic scholar, wasn't he? Like
Right,
a
right.
rabbi, because I know these Sephardic scholars by name, not by their work. So
Okay, but you're correct. So Elisha ben Abuya had a commentary on this particular passage with if you do the right thing, if you let the mother go and don't kill the mother and don't take the mother and the children at the same time, the text says if you go to the Torah, you will be assumed as of a long life. And the next verse, as we just read, is about the parapet not falling off and getting killed. So let me read you this commentary, because I didn't memorize this at all. Elisha ben Abuya comes through Jewish tradition as a heretic. As a heretic, he gets really bad press for the following reason. Another time, he saw a person ascend a tree and take the mother bird together with her eggs, an act prohibited by the Torah. We just read that. It's in this week's Torah push. The next day, he saw another person climb a tree and send away the mother bird and take the eggs. In other words, he followed the Torah injunction. On the way down, a snake bit him and the man died. Elisha thought to himself, listen up, Leona, this is exactly your question. Quote, the Torah promises that one who sends away the mother bird will live long. Yet the man who acted in accordance with God's commandment had his life cut short. whereas the sinner was unharmed. As a result, Elisha ben Abiah stopped believing in Torah. What does this remind you of? The person who violated the Torah law escaped and lived long. Just as the Torah promises, if you follow the commandment, the guy who followed the commandment died. And as a result, Elisha said, I'm done with this. I don't believe in this at all.
Sometimes bad things happen to good people and
Sometimes bad.
reverse.
Go ahead.
And you need to, God gives us the will of free choice. It's never been, God will watch out for you. If you're texting while you're crossing a busy street and you get run over, that's on you. And this is the same thing. That guy should have been paying attention to his surroundings. It's kind of an implied, God will give you a long life, but you kind of got to do your part also.
That's it. Okay. Where's Leona? You keep your box keeps moving on my screen.
Well, because my husband's making noise here, so I keep on muting and unmuting.
Well, those husbands will do that. We
Yes,
make a lot of noise. We make a lot of noise. So Leona, you just moved again. Where'd you go? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's moving for me too. They keep moving around for
I'm
some
here.
reason.
He must have shut up. So what's the impetus of the question that you asked? Because it's, as I said, it's covered in this Torah portion. Very interesting with Elisha ben Abiah, who lost his faith.
But one thing you said before was that the rabbi has to help you get your faith back. It's not just
I didn't say has to. I didn't say has to. But certainly the implication is that if you have a relationship with a spiritual leader, yes, one of the roles that we play is to counsel people regarding that which the restoration of one's faith, if possible.
But anybody can do that. It could be a family member,
correct.
it could be anybody helping you in some way to get your faith back. It doesn't have to be an official to do that.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. There's nothing that says only go to a clergy person. You may have doubts. You may be feeling doubtful about, and at our age, this is not unusual at all. And go searching for some sense of, well, what the hell does all this mean? And people sometimes find that answer in a variety of different ways. So I think they find it, for me, I think they find it mostly in relationships and community, as opposed to theology.
To me, it reminded me of the book of Job.
Why does it remind you? It's Anne, right?
Yeah, because he had faith and then all of these bad things happened. He brought it to God himself, which, I mean, I don't know if all of us do that. And then God replied, so that, I don't know, that's what came to my mind.
Well, the book of Job, again, another class that I suggest that you have a lesson on, is a Greek book. And it has 3 or 4, it's really, the whole book of Job is a wager between Satan and God. It's kind of bizarre in that sense. It's God saying, Satan saying to God, and Satan is one of the ministering angels of God in classic Jewish demonology, of which we have tons. It's something else we rarely teach people, but we got tons of angels and demons, and they all have specific jobs. And Satan was one of the original members of that group. And he made a bet with God. So you see this guy, Job, he really loves you, but he has, he's got everything. He's got 2 houses. He's got a Lexus. He's got a Tesla. He goes all over the world. Why don't you just zap him and see how fast that faith goes when things don't go well? God says, okay, I'll bet you. And he does. And at the end, the last section, he gets rewarded. Not until after, I think it's in Job 42, where God says, why don't you, Job, just shut up? Where were you when I created the world? Where were you? This is Out of the Whirlwind, which is a classic Holocaust book from when I was a kid. The book of Job is very, very, and there was a movie about 15 years ago called A Serious Man, Coen Brothers, Coen, and it's their take on the book of Job. It's a really dark film. If you ever do a film series, which again, it's a great adult education thing. We used to call it sacred cinema. If you ever do like a film series, this is one of the movies that I would suggest you include, along with Crimes and Misdemeanors, which is an even better. Crimes and Misdemeanors is a Yom Kippur movie, because it's the book of it's Cain and Abel who get away with murder. Cain gets away with murder and is rewarded. It's fascinating. We rarely teach this to the kids, but you see, this is part of life. Sometimes bad people get away with stuff. And so, as Mira was saying, you got to learn how to, and Leona was saying, that's part of this experience called life. You got to learn how to live with it or make the choices with it. Christo, Bavakasha.
Leona mentioned about, well, what if you've lost your faith? It reminds me of when I was when I was a guest speaker in front of an audience, and all of a sudden I realized they're all either agnostics or they're atheists. I realized some atheists in the back were actually very anti-religion, and here I am representing a religion as a guest speaker in their spot. And one of them said, I just wish that all religion would be banned and we'd all get along better. And I said, okay, so hurry over to North Korea and see how that works for you. And then I asked her, I said, let me ask you this, ma'am. What's more important? What you believe or what you choose to do in response to what you believe?
Right.
And I had my Shul's Siddur, we were still using Gates of Prayer then, now we're on Mishkan Tefillah. It says like pray as if everything depends on God, but
Right.
act as if everything depends on you.
Correct.
Who rises from prayer better persons, their prayer's already been answered.
Correct. Well, this is the debate or the conversation that you engaged in it continues. I mean, look, religion in its pure form is designed to bring people together. In its most corrupt form, it's used to kill people. And one of the geniuses of the American experiment is when the people about a half an hour from where I'm sitting right now, across the river at Independence Hall, decided that you shouldn't have a state religion. As Jews, if you look at Jewish history, and we don't teach Jewish history enough, every time we've been in a situation where there's a state religion and we're the minor, we're the other, and remember, though, this language is being used right now, we get killed. One of the challenges, and I don't want to offend anybody, but this is historically accurate. One of the challenges right now in the situation in Israel is that you have a theocracy, a minority of real right-wing religious fanatics who are helping to control the government, as opposed to, by the way, the originators of Zionism in the 1800s. And this you can track this almost with the conversion of Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, when he converted to Christianity in order to probably, according to a lot of scholarship, save his job, and became and Christianity became the state religion of the Holy Roman of the Roman Empire. You can almost track the rise in state-sponsored anti-Semitism, because when you're the other, and Jews have been the other in many cultures, every time we're that way, we get burned. And so in the Passover Seder, and in a lot of the texts in the social justice prophets, and in a lot of the moral texts in Torah, that talk about remembering the widow, the stranger, the ger, that's just not ancient text. That has extreme political implications for the life in which we are living. And so when Mira talked about, the woman, the marginalization of women, in many cultures, women were also considered the other. So this is opening the door to the whole moral ethical strand in Judaism. But pure religion of bringing people together in community, that's the purest form of this. But be careful when it becomes political. And every Jew should, but most of us don't. We don't teach Jewish history enough. We don't teach history enough. But whenever religion is used as a political pawn, usually the Jewish community gets hurt. Usually, it's very frightening. It's very fascinating, and it's still going on today. So it's not something that disappeared. It's still, just read the papers. Yashin, por favor, s'il vous plaît, bavakasha. I'm out of languages.
Hello, Rabbi. I guess it's my literal mind that is still stuck on Abulia's comment.
Yes.
So I think, I mean, poor guy. He suffered from a logical fallacy as far as I'm concerned, because and then he basically counseled on the basis of that, because the way I see it, there are many different ways. I mean, God's creative force is in all creatures, is in all humans, but there are many different ways that creativity, that life manifests. And to say that that a person died because he was faithful and yet he got killed, what about, and then he loses faith because of that. What about the fact that the serpent that killed him did not have the same faith, and it was a collusion of two worlds in terms of their way of being alive on this planet? I mean, it's do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, you can't blame things that come upon you by people who are not of the same belief system or belief of, a level of faith, and then say God doesn't, exist, or God is not, applicable to my life story anymore. That is what really stuck with me. I'm sorry, I'm bringing
No,
it
no, no,
back.
no. Oh, no, no, no. Because you see, you open you open the door to the conversation of what faith is, and is my faith better than your faith, and is my faith, and the whole concept of a supernatural being.
Yeah.
And the use sometimes, as we've all done, of the supernatural being as an excuse when we don't want to take responsibility for our own actions. And some of you've already touched on this. Taking responsibility for our own actions is, for most people, very frightening. It is a lot easier to blame somebody else. The teacher did it. The teacher doesn't like me. Well, did you study for the test? Well, but the teacher doesn't like me. That's why. No, 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 no. And God is as a projected image of an idealized parent. it's real easy to blame somebody else. But all of us will in some way, shape, or form probably go to Yom Kippur services in a month or less than 3, but however long it is. And if you look at the words, part of the prayers, regardless of what synagogue you go to, implicit in some of those prayers is, hey, you got to take responsibility for your own life. In almost every Yom Kippur service, at the beginning, and every rabbi I know has preached on this, is the midrash, the text that says, for sins between man and God, Yom Kippur atones. For the sins between man and man, Yom Kippur does not atone. Meaning, you can blame God all you want. But if you screw up, you have to take responsibility. When we teach this, used to teach this to kids, I'd say this is the Jewish idea of sin. The Jewish idea of sin. Right? Do something, oops, I made a mistake. Erase it. I now know what I did wrong, so I can correct it. It sounds silly, I know. But you know something? This is exactly what the Jewish idea of sin is really about. Learn what you did wrong. Act, as Christo is saying, redo what your action is. If you need to say, I'm sorry, and move on. But you don't say, I screwed up. God will save me. That's not our ballpark. That's another ballpark. It's not our ballpark. But as you get older and life becomes more complex, the ability to say, I need to take responsibility for my own life, in many cases becomes really, really a challenge. Some people can do this. Some people can't. Some people can never take responsibility for their own life. There's 10, 11 people. Some of you probably know some people like this. No matter what you say, you sit down and you talk to them. It's always the reason I couldn't do this because this is to happen. Those people are against me. That circumstance happened. You know, this is part of the Yom Kippur liturgy, but it's basic Judaism. And to go back to what Leona was saying, I've lost my faith. What happens when somebody says, I lost my faith? The next logical answer is, lost your faith in what? In a being that you may not even believe in yourself, in your community, in the world? Because the concept of faith is so amorphous in many ways. And every rabbi's had somebody comes in and says, Rabbi, I don't believe in God anymore. And it's as if we're going to like fall down and shrivel up and melt like the witch. But what, you said, well, what God don't you believe in? The supernatural creator, listener, hearer, doer, intervener, or some other God? And what faith do you have? This is where, like Leona, this is where it gets very, very sticky, because sometimes what the tradition in Judaism says, well, if you want to enter this arena, you have to be willing to hold the mirror up, which is the high holidays. Hold the mirror up to yourself. And that's really painful. And you have to be willing. Sometimes we talk about this in some of the Jewish sacred aging workshops, about the tension between holding on and letting go. Sometimes you have to have the courage, and it takes courage. Sometimes just let go of stuff that's holding you back. but it's tough. It's sometimes it's very, very tough sometimes. That passage in Genesis 12, which we'll read in a couple of months, Lech Lecha, Genesis 12, that interpretation goes a million different ways. So, you see, Leona, that one question, it's one of the great questions. So, you go back and say, okay, what faith have I lost? And then what faith do I want? Because that's equally, Judaism is this wonderful civilization which says, like Christo was saying at the beginning, argue, doubt, challenge, don't take anything on faith. Come up with your own answers. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to do that. So then the question is, well, what do you want to have faith in? Well, that's an even better question. So, because we've all lost faith in things along the way, all the time. All the time. That's Exodus 3. Nothing is static. Nothing is static. We have 3 minutes. I just want to ask you to go to 24:1. Because we end it at 1 p.m., right? Which is, I think, for you guys, noon.
11.
How many hours are you now?
2 hours earlier than you.
Okay, so my 1 is your 11.
Right.
Yeah, it's like Arizona, and they should just have one time. It just drives me crazy. But we'll be done in.
They don't change.
We'll be done in time for those of you who need to get to the game to see the Colorado State game, which I know out there today is like Torah.
One advantage of being in Israel, it's all one time zone anyway.
Yeah, Are you in Israel?
I wish. I'm going back next year.
Oh, I forget where are you located?
Oh, I meant to put it here. Lubbock, Texas. I'm Central Time.
Oh, Lubbock.
I am
That's right.
barely driving distance to Temple Aaron on occasion.
So verse 1, chapter 24, I wanted to point this out to you because in case you get into a conversation at a cocktail party, as you know, cocktail parties is one of the 5 worst inventions of the human race.
It is.
I agree.
No, seriously, I don't know why they exist because they serve no purpose. A man takes a wife and possesses her. Mira, this is the biblical language. Don't get angry. She fails to please him because he finds something. Now, this translation is obnoxious. Other translation says something not that he doesn't like. And he writes a bill of divorce and hands it to her, and she leaves his household, becomes the wife of another man, etc., etc., etc. This is the biblical proof text for divorce in Judaism. You all heard of a get, which is an additional bill of divorce, and all kinds of, even been on Law and Order many years ago. Ki yikach ish isha in the Hebrew, if yikach takes ish, a man, a woman, isha, uvala, and marries her, vayehi im lo timsa chen, and doesn't find something chen, grace. Chen is grace. Literally translated in the English is grace. Be'enav, in his eyes, kimatsaba, and finds in her ervat davar. Ervat davar, something unseemly. And many of these, this translation is something he doesn't like. Now, one of the most fascinating, and there's a whole tractate in the Talmud called Gittin, Gittin, which is the Talmudic collection of interpretations on this one verse. And I'll show you how interesting that this is, because one of the classic interpretations of ervat davar is she puts too much salt in the soup. But what does that mean? Now, you can take that literally, Obviously, Chuck has had that soup. Especially chicken soup. Too much salt in the chicken and matzo ball soup really kills the whole game. But what that means, if you get off the literalness and you go to the Talmudic, it says too much salt in the soup, and you get off that literalness of actually too much salt in the soup, what that has been interpreted to mean is even sometimes the smallest break in that initial love can be the cause of why people seek a divorce. We're talking modern life, not talking about ancient life. That this ervat davar can mean a myriad of different things. So in some states, in the concept of irreconcilable differences as a legal means in the court system for allowing two people to divorce is really nothing more than a contemporary interpretation of ervat davar. I don't like this anymore. And here's a challenge, here's another conversation for you. Because we catalog, we're aware of this in my work. The largest number of divorces in the United States of America right now are what is called in the tradition, in the literature, gray divorce. It's people over the age of 50 whose the nest is empty, the kids leave, husband, and most of it's being generated by women, according to the literature. And they look at each other after 30 years of marriage and they'll say, I'm 55 years old. The kids are gone. We've done our job. God willing, I have 30 more years of life. I'm done. And please don't think I'm making this up. I can give you the source material with one of the podcasts we did last year with Linda Hirschman, who wrote the book on gray divorce. So this text, which is the legal, the Torah proof text, as we did the medical ethics, this is the proof text for divorce in Judaism. And there's an entire tractate in Talmud that just discusses this. It's a fascinating study. So we're over time. I'm sorry. Stay safe, everybody. Shabbat shalom. Take care of yourself. Have a good holiday, a peaceful year. Do a lot of those prayers for some peace because, man, we need it. So you take care. Be well. Sherry, thank you. Everybody,
thank you,
take care.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you
Shabbat
very
shalom.
much.
Mute.